Good afternoon. Boy, that's loud. All right, thanks. Hey, only one mic, no problem. All right, very good. Everybody get a good look. Okay, because we're going to get rid of this and loosen up the tie and get comfortable here. I started to come in my running suit because I thought maybe it would be better. This is my second trip to Global Science. This is my first one. I came in not to speak, but to kick some verbal rear end of a speaker that was here in February that was saying some nasty things about another speaker who was here, who unfortunately didn't have the ability to defend himself because he was trying on new clothes and new bracelets and that kind of thing in Las Vegas at the time. But I want to tell you that being here is a real thrill. All the speakers are just absolutely tremendous. They just really are. They've all got so much to talk about. And I was especially, even things like I'm part Indian also. Robert Morning Sky mentioned that lots of folks are. And the thing is that one of the things I learned this time is I learned what I was doing wrong. See, when I grew up, I kind of knew how to do that Indian dance thing. And I even knew the part about, the fact that it was to attract women. But the thing is, every time I did it, the women were going the wrong way. And I was out at the tables, and Sabrina set me straight. She says, what you're doing wrong is you're doing it in reverse. So now that I understand that, I'll get them to come, and rather than going in the other way. I'm going to go ahead and start off with a quote by Patrick Henry because I think that, let's see if we got this backwards, upside down. No, that actually works, doesn't it? We are apt to shut our eyes against a painful truth. For my part, I'm willing to know the whole truth, to know it to the worst, know the worst, and to provide for it. There's no time for us to play games and to mince words and that kind of thing. We need to get down to the fact that, folks, we've got some serious crises on the horizon. And whether or not you choose to believe one of the speakers or another speaker or another speaker or another speaker, most of them are saying there's one crisis or another that's out there that we've got to deal with, and they're all coming up relatively shortly. I want to go ahead and tell you that the title of this is Strategies for Surviving the New World Order. First thing I want to do is go ahead and apologize in advance for the fact that I'm going to have to talk really fast because I've got so much stuff to go through. So we'll try to find a way to make up for some of that, but if you can't get all the information, if I can't get it all in now, you can see me at the tables, you can see me at the workshops, at the dinners, whatever you want to do. Be glad to talk to you. By way of an outline, we're going to talk a little bit about my background, a little bit about the history, about the current trends, and then what we can do to actually prepare. My history. I went to school, grade 1 through 12, in a place called, believe it or not, Hee Haw Salutes, Reeltown, Alabama, population 50. They didn't really have 50. They said they had to have 50 in order to get a little dot on the map. I have some good news and bad news as far as my education is concerned. I don't have a PhD. I do have a master's, which is, BS, and then there's MS. I actually have a master's in health administration, but good news and bad news. I did graduate third in my class from Reeltown High School. The bad news is that since there were only 26 students and I was not the valedictorian and I was not the salutatorian, I didn't make it the top 10%. I went to a major hospital after getting my master's degree in health administration and started working there. And then I started seeing those commercials on TV at night saying, you too can get rich in real estate. And I said, that sounds good to me. You can stop paying taxes. You can get rich. Hey, let's try that. So I did. I started buying single-family houses and that kind of thing. Pretty soon I decided I could make more money doing that than I could working at the hospital. So I left. Pretty soon I had not only a lot of real estate going on, but I had a seminar. I had my own TV show. I had a lot of things going for me. I remember back in 1985, a lot of my students, because I used to have a room about half as big as this old room that we would have packed every month for the alumni meetings. And the students would come in, and in 1985 they were concerned about one thing. They were talking about passing laws that would take away the tax benefits. And I remember writing a newsletter to say, there's no way that'll happen, don't worry about it, because Congress couldn't possibly be that stupid. Because if they pass that law, there will be massive foreclosures, massive defaults on loans, there'll be, problems with the banks, et cetera, et cetera. Everything that I said would happen, happened. But there was just a little problem along the way. When the S&L crisis did come to fruition, they needed some scapegoats. And they couldn't say, hey, we really screwed up. So instead of that, they said, let's find somebody that we can say screwed up. Let me ask you a question real quickly. How many people have ever bought a piece of property, and when you bought that property, you had a clause in there that said something like this: this is the sole and entire agreement between the buyer and the seller? Anybody? A bunch of you? Most of you? I guarantee you, every one of you who's ever sold real estate or done any other major transaction, it's in there. They used a very strange technicality to indict me on around 67 charges, and I was looking at around 250 years in Club Fed. And that's a pretty scary thing. So, I've been kind of in the lion's den. I did go to the court, and the judge even tried to get the case thrown out, saying, hey, this is ridiculous. He tried to talk the prosecutor out of it. But since the prosecutor already spent $200,000 on the prosecution, they thought they'd go through with it. Well, I got a tremendous 500 hours of community service out of it, but I came out with the severe conclusion there was no justice in the justice system. And I started working on finding ways to document that and ways to deal with it. And that's I guess why I'm here where I am today. What I found out was practically everything that I had been taught in high school and college about the history of this country was a lie. Very brief history. History is a lot different from what you imagine. I want to start out in a very strange place in history, and that is talking about a thing called the Geneva Bible, because I think that one of the things that you'll find out is that this is a place that you can start to trace some real important things to. I was told, for example, when I was growing up, and I went to the Baptist church every time it opened, every time, until I was like 18 years old, I was taught that the King James Version was the first English version of the Bible. First version translated into English. Why? As a matter of fact, way before the King James, the Geneva Bible was out. King James banned the Geneva Bible. And you say, wait a minute, if the Geneva Bible is such a good book, why was it banned? Well, let me tell you why it was banned. First of all, in any of this stuff that I've got, I'm more than willing to let you take a look at. This is a little pamphlet of the instructions to the translators. And if you see this, you understand real quick what's going on. You start to understand some of the things that are going on with it. And part of the thing is, let me just give you one quote out of the Geneva of 1591. Ephesians 6:11-12. See if you can figure out anything that might cause a king not to want to have this out. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may abide to stand against the assaults of the devil. For we wrestle not only against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers. Sounds pretty familiar so far, right? And against worldly governors, who are the princes of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness, which are in the high places. Now that basically says the governments are all evil. Can you understand why they would want to get rid of something like that? Well, they in fact did. And as a matter of fact, if you read the instructions, you find out that they left out a lot of things. The true meaning of baptism, the true meaning of what the church is. And the reason why they did it is they wanted to be able to control the people. They wanted to say that the government is divinely empowered and that the church you got to listen to. And of course, he controlled the church. This from the Encyclopedia Britannica, just to give you a quick idea, and I don't have time to really read all this or go through it. 1910 talks about some of the real purposes of the King James Version, and it's not what you were taught in school or not what you were taught most other places. So, for those reasons, the King James Bible, and of course the following editions, there's a book called, by the way, New Age Bible Versions, and it's by Gail Ripplinger. And it talks about 65,000 plus changes in the King James versions to some of the New Age versions. There's 20,000 changes from the Geneva to the King James. So you kind of get the idea that they're trying to change everything around so it means something totally different than what it originally meant. Let's talk about the pre-Revolutionary War. The Rothschilds. Their goal was to control the world through controlling money. Very simple philosophy. I don't care who the government is. Let me control the money and I will control the country. And they did exactly just that. Their plan was to finance both sides of the wars. They did that. They took over the Bank of England by financing the Napoleonic Wars and deciding who was going to win. They financed both sides of the war between the states. They financed both sides of most wars. And they can make a decision as to who can win and how they can profit and that kind of thing. And they've been doing it for literally centuries. Let's go to the Revolutionary War. Now, let's go back to pre-revolutionary. The king, when America was started effectively corporations or trust. Who owned America to start with, or the part that was under English rule? The king. It was his own personal property. And he could license you to be able to get minerals and do this and do that as long as you paid your fair share. But the king literally owned the whole country, other than what France owned in Spain and those kind of things. He owned it. Here's an interesting thing about France, though, that you're going to see in a minute. Revolutionary War. What was the real reason for the Revolutionary War? Very interesting. Not what you were taught in school. Real reason for the Revolutionary War. Here's a few quotes from William Manly German in a speech to the House of Commons, December 1913. The Rothschilds Bank caused a bill to be introduced in the English Parliament, which provided that no colony of England could issue its own money. Thus, they had to use English money. The colonies were compelled to discard their money and mortgage themselves to the Rothschilds Bank of England to get money. Then, for the first time in the history of the United States, money began to be based on debt. Benjamin Franklin stated that in 1 year from that date, the streets of the colonies were filled with the unemployed. Franklin later claimed this was the real cause of the War of Independence. He said the colonies, we heard it was the Tea Act, right? Things like tea tax and stuff. The colonies would gladly have, this is according to Benjamin Franklin, the colonies would gladly have borne the little tax on tea and other matters had it not been that England and the Rothschilds Bank took away from the colonies their money, which created unemployment, dissatisfaction, and debt. And that is the real cause, folks, of the war. Next thing that I want to talk about real quick is something called the definitive treaty. We heard this nasty rumor that we won the Revolutionary War. Ain't true. We did not win it. The last battle that was fought, Cornwallis surrendered the battle, not the war. Proof? About 1 year ago, this document, which I just threw on the floor, came into the country. It was brought in by some folks that I know. It's called the Definitive Treaty of Peace between Great Britain and the United States, signed at Paris, 3 September 1783. It had never been in this country before that. This is what really, really, really happened. You think there was a war? Nah, read this. Listen to this. And again, I've got this stuff available for anybody that wants to look at it later. Here's an introduction. It having pleased the divine providence to dispose the hearts of the most serene and most potent prince. This is somebody that lost a battle is a most potent prince? I don't think so. George III, by the grace of God, listen to this. Here's his titles. King of Great Britain. France. Who did we borrow the money from that helped us win the war? We thought France. Now we owe that money to the King of England? Interesting. Ireland, Defender of the Faith, Duke of Brunswick and Lunenburg, Arch-Treasurer and Prince-Elector of the Holy Roman Empire, Treasurer of the Catholic Church, positions all over, etc. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. What happens is, we start looking then at who are the parties to the treaty. We find out the parties to the treaty is this guy named John Adams, Esquire. Does anybody know where you go get an Esquire title? England. I don't think we gave them out. Benjamin Franklin, Esquire. John Jay, Esquire. These were all people who were titled nobility in England, who were negotiating this treaty. And do you know what the treaty really said? The treaty really said it's agreed that everything that England and the people of England and the king and whoever else owned and any obligations that existed before this treaty are still law. The king still owns it. The king still owed all the money. Nothing changed except we could govern ourselves theoretically as long as we paid the rent. Where did that show up in the Constitution? This document actually required us to form a Constitution, so we did. And so, where did it show up in the Constitution? Here's a couple of places. Section 10. States shall pass no law impairing the obligation of contracts. Oh, so we still owe the money, so the land's still the king's. That's right in the Constitution. Snuck that one by you. Or grant any title of nobility, which means the king is still the one that puts all the esquires on all the names of the people who still carry them around in this country and call themselves Americans. Does this get more interesting as you go along? It's kind of a strange thing. What's the supreme law of the land? You read in the Constitution, it says the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. No, it doesn't. It says the Constitution and treaties are the supreme law of the land. The thing that people don't know is what treaties. And the answer to that one is in a law case called Hamilton versus Eaton, 1796. And guess what it said was the most supreme law of the land? The definitive treaty. So it set it out even then. Back in the 1850s, there was a group of people. You can call them any set of names you want to call them who got together, who hired people to write books and told them what to write. They hired some people by the name of, Karl Marx, Frederick Engels, to write the Communist Manifesto, put those on one side. Hired another group of people, a guy named Ritter and a guy named Nietzsche, to write what turned into fascism and Nazism. Isn't that interesting? They hired in the 60s a guy by the name of General Albert Pike to write the master plan for the takeover of the world, planned out World War I, World War II, most of the minor conflicts, and World War III. Plans have been out. The Civil War. Why was Lincoln killed? Money. He wanted to take the money out of the hands of the international bankers. And by the way, let me share with you real quick. This is something that a friend shared with me, and I think it's real good, is how to make your money. I'm not telling you to change your money so that it's different from what it is, but if you want to really put out legal money, it's necessary for you to strike out a couple of things on the money that you carry around. And here's what it looks like when you fix it. When you fix this section over here, it says this note is all debt. You have changed it to tell the truth because that's what it is. It has nothing at all to back it up. How did we lose our Constitution? Because, folks, we lost even the Constitution that we had. It died. It died in 1861 when the Confederacy walked out. It ended. There's a second Constitution. Oh, guess what? You are not a part of it. Little court rulings like, oh, the Second Amendment doesn't apply to you. That's right. You know why? You're not a party to the contract, nor were any people parties to the contract. We'll cover that in a minute. 1913, what happened then? The Feds and the 16th Amendment set up the corporate treasury, not federal. Who protects the President of the United States? Secret Service? And under what organization is the Secret Service? Which treasury? The corporate treasury. Very interesting. We'll see how that one plays out in a minute. They put us in bankruptcy in 1933, and we've never come out of bankruptcy. The Bank of England is still the trustee for the people in power. In 1933, they took all our gold. In 1964, they took all our silver. Over 10 years ago, they took all our copper. There's not even copper. There's copper on the outside of pennies, but it's mostly zinc now. 64, let's come up to that. Why was Kennedy shot? Same exact reason. Executive Order 11110. Authorized the United States notes. Why do we need to pay debt? Pay interest on pieces of paper. Has anybody seen the film that shows for a fact who shot Kennedy, shows the gun going off, okay, great. The person who shot Kennedy was, for one of you folks, the driver of the car that he was driving in, that he was riding in. The driver of the car, and I don't have time to go into exactly how it happens, but anybody who raised their hands, or I'll be glad to tell you later. The driver of the car had the guy on the right take the wheel, he turned around and popped him. That's exactly how it happened. And remember what, folks? This is the Secret Service who works for the Treasury, which is a part of the Federal Reserve, which is a part of the International Monetary Fund, which is a part of the House of Rothschild, on and on and on and on. That's what really happened. Problems that we face today. First of all, there's no justice in the country. There's no constitution in the country. I've done a lot of work in the last few years on income taxes. And one of the things I want to tell you, folks, is that everything that this man right here, Eddie King, said is absolutely 100% right on, dead accurate. And Eddie has taught a lot of folks a lot of stuff. And I've gained a lot of stuff from Eddie. I've gained a lot of stuff from a lot of other people. But everything he said, and he and I could probably get into a contest. He'd probably win because he's been doing it a lot longer than me. We could get in the contest on all the reasons why you do not owe federal income tax. But guess what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And people may take exception with me on that, but I'm going to tell you it doesn't matter because I'll tell you why. They're still sending people to prison. They're still indicting people. They're still getting a 95% conviction rate. They're still doing it despite the fact that it is provable beyond the shadow of a doubt that it is not legal. It is voluntary. For example, a lawyer called me up who had just gotten out of Club Fed. He kept saying to the judge, show me the law that says I'm liable, and I'll pay the taxes and do the stuff. You can do whatever you want. I said, go to jail. Another guy that I know, St. Louis. He was charged with state willful failure. The state auditor completed his federal return for him. I don't know if they ever heard of forgery, but completed it for him, and then used that as the basis of doing the state return, and then could show that he owed the state tax. So you don't owe the state tax either. That was Dave Wilbur, also known on the internet if you deal with that as Really Sales, or he also writes under Winston Smith. I'm sorry? Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. The Montana case that I'm working on right now, I'm leaving Monday to go to Montana on August 31st. There's a case coming up. Folks, we have literally thrown everything at the federal government. We put in 1,500 pages of briefs and all kinds of other legal mumbo-jumbo gobbledygook. And we've got lots and lots of surprises for them for the trial. Believe me, lots and lots of surprises. But the thing is that you know what they say about all that stuff? It's frivolous. It's meritless. It's specious. There's only 4 crimes. Oh, by the way, the federal government doesn't even have the authority to prosecute. Doesn't even have the authority to prosecute a federal tax case. Not on individual income tax. Claire Wolfe, let's go to what the crimes are that they're going to get you for, folks. Wrote a little thing called Welcome to Future Felons of America, where she talks about things. Here's a few examples of crimes that you can be found guilty of, and I bet you at least, how many people have a pill box of some kind? Turn yourself back in the back. Because I bet you that probably half of you are putting prescription drugs into those pill boxes. If you put one prescription drug into a non-approved prescription container, you are violating the law. If you drive past a school with a gun, you're violating the law. If you don't get you for that, they get you for conspiracy to do something, even though you just talked about it, or you get mad at some guy at the end of the bar because he's talking nasty and you hit him, and they get you for, violation of civil rights and all this. They've got more laws than they can say grace over, folks, and they're using them to put good people in jail for no reason at all, period, end of sentence. Ayn Rand in Atlas Shrugged had a quote that said, they can't rule innocent people, so they have to create laws that make people guilty of doing something. And if they write enough laws, you're guilty of violating some of those laws. Remember yesterday what Eddie said about the necessity of publishing anything that applies to us citizens out in the 50 states? That's absolutely true. One of the things that he mentioned, for example, was 1.1-1 in the Code of Federal Register. It's gone. They don't even start on the stuff that's on the internet and that kind of thing till 1.23T. I got an email the other day from this guy, and he referenced 48 U.S.C. 1441. And I said, I've seen that somewhere before, and I've got to find out where it is. And all of a sudden I remembered where it was. It was in this book. How many people have seen this book? Okay, several of you. Okay, in the back of this book it gives definitions of words. And the definition for United States of America, let me explain this, folks. Capitalization counts big time. You know, if you thought your teachers were being picky, in the law, capitalization is extremely important. United States of America in all caps means a plaintiff pleading in a case having the venue and jurisdiction originating in the Philippines. Isn't that strange? United States, if they go after, Nancy versus United States, that's plaintiff pleading in a case having venue and jurisdiction originating in the District of Columbia. When they file an action against you, they do it in all uppercase letters. You know why? That's a fictitious person. That's all they can use. They can't go after you as an individual. They put you in jail, but they go after you as a fictitious person. And guess what, folks? I say, hey, I think I'll go get a copy of this off the internet. It ain't there. Cornell University, it ain't there. It's not anywhere. West Publishing and all the other publishing companies and all are taking the stuff out of the law books. Guess what else is happening? You've probably seen, if you play on the internet, people advertising, we will give away law books if you will come get them or pay for postage or that kind of thing. So all the law books are being gotten out of law libraries and that kind of thing. What does that mean? The only thing that people are using anymore is the computerized stuff, and they're taking the stuff off the computerized versions left and right. It's not there. You can't even find the law in many cases to be able to decide whether you're guilty or not. Trial by jury, folks, let me just tell you, that is a thing of the past. There's a quote by Jerry Spence that's just absolutely riveting. I won't go into it in the interest of time. One of the things that they do to you, for example, willful failure to file has 3 elements. One element of willful failure to file is that you had the liability to file. Second element is that you didn't file. And the third thing is you knew you had to file, but you didn't file. In other words, you willingly didn't file. Now, if somebody's indicted for willful failure to file, what would you say would be pretty much of a gimme? They didn't file, right? So that only leaves 2 arguments. Either I'm not liable or I didn't mean to do it. The courts are now taking away, without question, one of those elements. They are saying liability is not an issue. They will say to you, the jury, I am telling you, the judge, I'm telling you as a matter of law, that man is liable. So that's not even an issue. We don't even want to argue about that. We don't even want to talk about it. And so the only thing you can argue is willfulness. And believe me, folks, you say, well, how could I be willful if I know all this stuff that Eddie talked about? And I know all these Supreme Court cases, and I know all that. They're still convicting a large percentage. One of the things I had a friend of mine write me who used one of the top constitutional lawyers is do not use a lawyer. Because a lawyer, by definition, works for the court. He has allegiance to the bar. And you've got to learn how to defend yourself because you're dead. Because the thing is, lawyers won't even bring up a lot of these issues that Eddie talked about. They can't bring them up because you know why? They'll be fined, they'll be disbarred, and it's happened time and time again. There's a guy by the name of Jeff Dickstein who wrote a book called Judicial Tyranny, and he talks about all the ways. And he's been disbarred in several states for trying to stand up for people. And the guys go, hey, I'm not going to be a hero. I'm going to go in there and do my little thing. And I'm not going to bring up all these arguments. And if you got to go to jail, you got to go to jail. Constitutional rights, folks, if you haven't got the points yet, the point is you have none. You have none. And if you still have any question about that, here is one little court case that, and there's several of them, that talk about the fact you have none. I guess I can turn it back on now. But indeed, no private person has a right to complain by suit in court on the ground of a breach of the Constitution. The Constitution, it is true, is a compact, but he is not a party to it. In other words, you aren't parties to the Constitution. You got no rights to complain about any violation of any of your rights, any of the Bill of Rights. You can forget about all that. You can forget about just about everything. Convictions without juries. Now, this is interesting. Here, we know that, for example, Eddie brought up, correct, absolutely correct, you can't file a tax return without giving up your Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights. That's absolutely correct, and yet they're putting people in jail for it. Sixth Amendment, right to trial by jury. You have a right to be confronted by your accuser and to have a jury of your peers decide the case. Garbage. That is total garbage. Now, if it is absolutely, and again, I've got all the details and I'll go into it on any level you want in private, but we don't have time today. They can convict you, if they can convict you of any minor federal case, any minor thing, they can sentence you to whatever they please under the new guidelines, because the way it works is, if you're convicted of some minor offense, the prosecutor can come in and say, we think that Ken also murdered somebody. And we think that Ken also did this and that and the other. And if he can get the judge to believe it without a trial, without witnesses, without evidence, just get him to believe it. If the judge thinks you did it, then you did it. That's an absolute fact. As a matter of fact, the Supreme Court has said that a judge can consider in sentencing you things for which you were acquitted of. It went to jury. They found you not guilty, but yet he can sentence you to those things. Federalism. We know that the Ninth Amendment that deals with, we've got a Constitution supposedly of enumerated powers. That one's dead. The fact is, folks, that there is these things called executive orders. And I want to just cover just a few of them. We talked about 13083 very briefly the other day. Some of the folks that did it were up here. Here's some executive orders that are currently in effect. And I'm not going to call off the numbers just to save time. Seizure of all communications. All. Everybody knows what the word all means. It means CBs, ham, everything. Everything. All. Seizure of all electric power, fuels, minerals. Seizure of all food supplies. Seizure of all means of transportation. Seizure of all American population. Seizure of all American population for workforces under federal supervision, including dividing families as necessary. Seizure of all health, education, and welfare facilities for both public and private. Empowering the post office to register all men, women, and children for use in whatever they want. Who's the post office under, folks? No, but who do they actually report to in the government? This will surprise you. Because of a little twist, they report to the Department of Defense. Department of Defense. Seizures of all airports and aircraft, all housing, all railroads, storage facilities. Now this one's one that gets you on anti-hoarding. You try to keep food in your house. It's a crime today to keep more than 9 months' supply of food. It's a crime to do that. And if they find you doing it, they can take everything you got. Take all your food. You've got to be dependent on them, and that's what they've got to have. And of course, we've got 13083, which takes away all the state's power and puts it in the hand of the federal government. Eddie mentioned the other day, like your talk, I guess you can tell that by now. Mentioned the other day this thing about deleted versus revoked and all that kind of stuff. All these different words mean different things. And if you think the deleted kind of means revoked and it means repealed and all that kind of stuff, let me tell you a secret about 13083. Somebody mentioned the other day it had been suspended. Suspended is not revoked. Suspended means to be temporarily halted in time. They can put it back anytime they want to when the need arises, and they will. The money problem. I helped some people file suit against the Federal Reserve for violation of Title 12, 411, which says Imagine this. Federal Reserve notes redeemable in lawful U.S. money at any Federal Reserve bank or the Treasury. Guess what? I go in with a bunch of bills, and I go up to the teller and play dumb, which is not hard for me. And I say, I want to redeem these for lawful U.S. money. And she goes, what do you want? I said, lawful U.S. money. She says, what's? I said, I don't know what it is. Just whatever it is, I want to swap this for lawful U.S. money. Just, whatever you want to give me, just give me. That's all I want. Because we had to make a case for the lawsuit. And she says, well, are they dirty? Are they torn? No, but I want lawful U.S. money. Because if these are redeemable in lawful U.S. money, they must not be lawful U.S. money. We filed a lawsuit against the Federal Reserve in Atlanta, against the Federal Reserve Board and the Treasury of the United States. It turns out that they come out and they say something really weird, which is that a Federal Reserve note, is an abstraction for $1. An abstraction? What's that? Black's Law Dictionary, page 10. Abstraction, taking from with the intent to injure or defraud. Wrongful abstraction is unauthorized taking or willful or withdrawing of funds and appropriation thereof to taker's benefit. And that's precious. And we know what an FRN is, a Federal Reserve note is. We've looked at the picture. It says all debt. By the way, there is a pending restraining order against the Federal Reserve to get them to stop operating until they can comply with 12.411. However, don't hold your breath. The judge said that he's going to take at least 6 months to make up his mind, and I'm sure they'll come up with something real creative to get out of that. In addition to that, we're losing our rights through things like trade treaties, environmental treaties. Question, how much of the land in the United States of America does the federal, state, and local government, for which there is no difference anymore, they're all the same, what percentage of our land do they own? Well, they own by title over half of it now. Over half of it. And again, in the interest of time, there's a list of, and I've got all this, millions of acres of different parcels that are in the possession of the United Nations at this time. And I'm talking about almost all of the big national parks. And if they don't get it under one way, they get it under World Heritage Sites, which includes things that really have World Heritage significance, like the Statue of Liberty, or like Thomas Jefferson's house, or like Independence Hall. Those are all under the protection. Anybody from Tennessee? Great Smoky Mountains National Park, you walk into it, for example, I've got pictures of this. You walk into it and it's got a sign that says, this is under UNESCO. And you walk into it and it says, first thing you see when you walk in, it says, First Amendment section over here. In other words, if you want to exercise your First Amendment rights, you go get a permit from the park people. Tell them what you want to say generally. They give you a permit. You go to stand in a certain site and you say whatever you want to say, as long as you don't, offend somebody, I guess. That's what's really going on, folks. We don't own anything anymore. We don't have the rights. In addition to what they own, though, they've got buffer zones. Yellowstone National Park, the United Nations controls, it's only 2 million acres, only. But the buffer zone is 15 million acres around it. If they don't like what you're doing, they do whatever they want to. UN Agenda 21, they're currently trying to take all the water through the heritage rivers and that kind of thing. All the water. They've already killed in Africa, folks, 1.9 million people by removing from them access to water and literally starving them to death. And they're trying to do it in this country. Currently, they're working on taking over the Chattahoochee River watershed. Economic conditions. Folks, this is a serious situation. Here's a few things. Listen to this one. WorldNet Daily, June 16, 1998. U.S. Undersecretary of Navy, the Honorable Jerry MacArthur, quotes, senior military Pentagon officials have been working closely with senior officials at Wall Street to perfect several scenarios that could quickly be put into action once, not if, once Wall Street crashes. Like what? Well, you ever heard of continuity of government? They basically put in martial law. That's the contingency plans. They implement all the executive orders. They take all the stuff that I mentioned that was already set up for them. That's what those executive orders are set up for. Any national emergency that they declare or otherwise. How about economic? Take a look at Standard & Poor's telling you that there is a 1 in 4 chance, according to them, of a 30-style depression based in the Asian markets. And the fact that the stock market here is going to drop by 25%. Japan's $1 trillion in debt, and they're in trouble, folks. Russia, their T-bill market collapsed on July the 8th. They had to pay 100% return on their money to be able to get 45-day T-notes out the door. Their stock market's off 80% since January. On Wednesday of this week, G7 cut them off from financing. They already spent all their money trying to support the ruble, and now they've got no access to more funds. United States, they expect a crash. Y2K. We could go on and on about Y2K, but just very, very briefly. Once a power system goes down, and folks, 50% of the companies that control the major utilities say they will not sustain a Y2K problem. Can't do it. If the power system goes down, how do you get it restarted? One of the facts that you find real quick is nobody knows how. All the engineers who used to manually restart systems are gone, retired, or dead. All the systems are run by computers. If you can't use computers, how do you restart them? How do you run a nuclear power plant without computers? And that's not even the main problem. The main problem is embedded systems. Embedded systems are the little chips that are in all the systems you use, like cars you drive and elevators and all kinds of other things. There's 50 billion of them. The rate of failure is estimated to be 1 to 3% of 50 billion. They don't even know where all of them are. They don't know when they're going to fail. Not on the year 2000 exactly. It could be anywhere from 99 to 2006. So that's another problem. 3-legged stool needed for one world government. That was a little article that came out, and it talked about the 3 things we need. First one is a world court. We've already got it, folks. It's already in place. It was put in place a couple of weeks ago. World tax. It's not going to take very much. That one will be in too. There won't be any option. A world army. Chairman Mao said that all power comes from the end of a gun. Very true. Department of State publication 7277 put out several years ago was for complete U.S. disarmament. They want to cut all the military forces and replace them with UN forces. Let me show you something interesting here. I want somebody to tell me, if they can, what military power the following numbers are associated with. And I'm only going to hit you with a few of them and answer quick. 709,000 soldiers, 293,000 reserve soldiers, 8 standing armies, 20 Air Force and Navy wings, 2,000 aircraft, 232 strategic bombers, on and on and on. What military power is that associated with? Who said United States? Okay, can you clarify that a little bit? These folks are the resources of the United States that have been dismantled since Bill Clinton took office. A major superpower thrown away. They're taking our military folks, and I'll hold this up just for a second. This is called the 29 Palm Survey that went out to several military units, and they were trying to figure out what our soldiers were willing to do. 85% of our soldiers are willing to violate an act known as Posse Comitatus, which says you can't use the military for civilian things. And in here it asks questions like, if there's a gun moratorium, would you shoot an American who wouldn't go along with the program? 85% of the soldiers would, in some degree, violate that act. If they don't violate the act, they're part of the ones that are downgraded. And that's just the fact of what's going on. UN troops are all over the country. Imminent threats, the Middle East. I don't even have to go into what's going on with that. Biological warfare, collapse of Russia or some other major power. Economic collapse, either with or without Y2K. Any excuse. Again, in the interest of time, I've got testimony from Oliver North during Iran-Contra where they specifically stopped him from talking about the contingency plans for suspending the Constitution. And that basically just means letting everybody know, hey, it's over. even though it's been over for a long time. The mark of the beast, cashless society, is already here, folks. It's already here. Social Security use requirements, bank accounts that have to be opened in order to get any government benefit. Right now in Atlanta, right now in Georgia, if you want a driver's license, you have to give them your thumbprint so they can digitize it. With a digitized thumbprint, they can put your thumbprint on just about anything they care to do. Government ID to fly, government ID to drive, government ID to do just about anything under the world. Health data monitoring from cradle to grave. Medical monitoring. One of the things that a lot of folks in this room are probably concerned about from time to time is something called practicing medicine without a license. That was actually foreseen. Benjamin Rush, signer of the Declaration of Independence, and the personal physician of George Washington said, unless we put certain rights regarding medicine, we're going to have a monopoly and they're going to end up taking over. And effectively, I've got copies of the actual FDA regulations, by the way, and I won't get into that again in the interest of time. But you would be amazed. If you want to see me back at my table, it's table 53 or 54, I don't know, somewhere in that basic range. Or at one of the workshops of that, I'll be glad to show you that. And you would be amazed at what they're doing with those laws. Control of food. You probably all know that hybrid seed will not produce crops that are very good. But they've come out with a new thing called seed terminator genes. Seed terminator genes basically say that that crop will produce seeds that are no good. They cannot be planted at all. They're basically non-reproducible. Genetically modified food. Vaccinations, whether you want them or not. If you don't like to take them in the normal, and I'm a very avid non-shot type person, they can just put them right now. This is July 27th Newsweek. Put them right into your tomatoes and potatoes and bananas and that kind of thing. Control of the media. We all know about that. Control of the media. Okay, let me talk about something kind of just change a little bit. Let's talk about what they're doing to your children. How many people in the audience have children in public school? A few. Okay, a few. Let me show you what they're... How many have grandchildren in public school? Okay, let me show you what they're doing. And let me just say, folks, if there are children in the room or people who are very squeamish or get offended easily, step outside for a few minutes. I can tell somebody to let you back in, but I'm going to talk about things that they're teaching in elementary and high school to the kids that are going to school today. I'm going to start with something a little bit more on the light side and go get into it. Secret curricula. They don't want you to know about it as a parent or a grandparent. They put it on computers and it's done at school and you never even know about it. Spying on the parents. Had this happen. They sent one of my children home with a lesson that was to find all the poisons in a house and to come back and report on it. But don't tell your parents what you're doing or get them to help you. Now, poisons are things like cleaning fluids, alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. Guess what happens with that information? I'm going to stick this up here, and I'm not going to say a thing. I'm going to let you look at it just for a second. There are 3 sections in here. One's on safe sex, one's on possibly safe sex, one's on unsafe sex. And I promise you folks, probably some of you won't know what some of those things even are. This was a bookmark given at Career Day in high school. This is a book. And you notice that it's published by a division of Random House, and here's about 15 pages out of the book. Again, folks, I'll have this back at my table. If you want to look at it, you'll be amazed. But this is what's really going on. Christian Alert Network put out a list of books. And again, there's so much that I could tell you. These quotes that I've got in here, listen to this one. Testing your ability to function sexually may be less threatening with your own sex if you happen to be quite young or still a bit uncomfortable with the opposite sex. Acceptance of homosexuality is an intolerant and homophobic attitude. It implies there's something to accept. And it goes on and on and on and on and on, and it doesn't stop. What to do about it? Revelation 18:4, come out. Basically is what it says. Get out of the system. First thing I want to talk about is get your body in shape. You can't wait till a crisis comes to say, okay, fine, it's time to lose weight. And if you don't know how to lose weight and get your body in shape, see me back at the table and I'll explain to you exactly how to do it. I've gained, in the last probably 6 months, 20 pounds of muscle. And I've lost about 50 pounds of fat, which means that I've dropped 30 pounds. Okay? And it can be done, and you better do it. Next thing is get your mind in shape. Learn how to do things, how to become self-sufficient, how to go work around the system, how not to volunteer, how to do things without using the government or without using any outside aids. Get your spirit in shape. Whatever you believe, get fully engaged. Get your protections in shape. Martial law will come. There's 300 concentration camps already set up, and I've got the quotes to prove it. Master arrest warrants already in place. You must get to a defendable, isolated property because the cities are going to be death traps, folks. You must have the means to defend yourself. You must get your assets in shape. That means getting your money out of the bank, converting it to something useful. Get your job in shape, and your job, quite simply, is to survive. You've got to be able to raise your own food. You've got to be able to take care of your own medical care, which means one thing you got to know is you got to get off the government's drugs, the ones that they approve, because they're not going to be available unless you follow their system. Utilities, when they go out, they may not come back on, so you better make provisions for that. All other life needs. Every time you go to the grocery store, to the warehouse, to anything you go to, you better think about the fact that if that's not available, what are you going to do about it? One thing that would happen for sure if we said there's a national emergency and everybody's on their own, I would bet you that probably half the people at the tables back there with nutritional products and that kind of thing to sell would stop selling them. You know why? Because that's their supply. You better stockpile what you can't create yourself and create what you can. Tradable assets, silver, excess food, excess nutritional items. Now, I apologize again. There was so much material I had to cover, and I actually only covered just a small part of what I thought I was going to be able to cover, but we're about down to our last minute. Let me just tell you this. We're going to be expanding on these things that we're talking about, especially in how to do the things that we're talking about in the workshop. I'm also going to be at a dinner tonight that you can come to. And, of course, you're more than welcome to come to the table and talk to me about it there. This is real, folks. This is not a joke. This is not anything to laugh about. If you believe that biowarfare is going to happen, or you believe that the Middle East is going to explode, or you believe that Russia is going to explode, whatever you believe, magnetic changes, you name it, get prepared, because what you do determines whether you make it or you don't. I appreciate your time, and if there's, I'm down to what, my last second? Okay. All right. I'll be glad to answer any questions later today. Thanks.